See, I bring that up to kind of, again, like I said, connect the thoughts. There seems to be too much noise, and it's kind of building up. Which, by the way, Chris, what was the article you sent me yesterday that mentioned Kelvin Sampson's approval? Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson's approval was from the Oklahoman as well, Brett Damel. And obviously, we're not privy of what being discussed in those meetings, but it's very clear that Commissioner Brett Yormark of the Big 12 has a plan. He has a vision, and I think they very well are executing it. Whether that's as early as June 1st, which would be next Thursday, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday, Thursday. Whether it's later, we shall see. But I definitely think there's something brewing. There's too much noise for there not to be building up. It's kind of like a volcano. It's about to erupt. There's smoke. There's a little rumbles, potentially an earthquake here and there, and then explodes. And I think we're really close to having that eruption. By the way, I know we had talked about it already, but the Big Ten started it. I mean,
Right,
when
right.
you raid USC and UCLA, that was the avalanche. I mean, if you really want to go even further, it was the SEC when they poached Texas and Oklahoma. But that's where it is. And if localizing it for the Houston Cougars perspective, which again, men's basketball head coach Kelvin Sampson seems to be on board and seems to be 100% behind the ideas, the innovative vision of Brett Yormark. For Houston, you gotta love it because after decades of being held out of the quote unquote Power Five, kind of being on the outside looking in of the Golden Club, for lack of a better phrase, it very well seems like they caught, and this is probably not the right way to word it, but they caught a break, or they're certainly in a very, very positive situation. Now, outside of being in either the Big Ten or SEC, it seems like the Big 12 is not only being proactive to being able to create their own niche in the ever changing world of college athletics right now, but if the Pac 12 falls apart, dissolves, the ACC seems to be trying to catch up. They're definitely being reactive to what's going around them in the college landscape. The Big 12 is the conference to be if it's not part of the Big Two.
Agreed. And just real quickly, Barry Thelma had quotes from Coach Kelvin Sampson and Oklahoma State's Coach Mike Boynton. Their thoughts on Commissioner Brett Yormark and quote from Coach Sampson. Talk about first impression, blew us away. Coach Boynton, I agree with Kelvin. I think Brett Yormark is a rock star, is an absolute rock star. The board of folks who selected him to be our commissioner did a very good job in being able to understand what our conference needs. So they were very, very spoke very highly of him. We'll see how it goes, and of course, he's not going to get support 100% from everybody. Some of his ideas, some folks don't want to change. They're set in their ways, but of course, Coach Sampson, it says, I don't know if it's in this article or not, but he really saluted Commissioner Yormark for being aggressive and being proactive. And that's
Called them a
one thing,
lottery pick.
a lottery pick, and that's one thing he's talked about for Houston athletics. When he said to us, he mentioned last Thursday here on the show, is Coach Sampson continues to push and think outside the box, push for facilities, push for upgrades, not standing still because other conferences aren't standing still, other opponents aren't standing still. So you got to continue to be active and aggressive. And that's one thing you definitely have to salute Brett Yormark for. And this is a great point. And then we're going to shift gears and go back to the rocket trade proposals as we close it out here on the Roundball Review Takeover. This is true. 5 years ago, the Big 12 was looked upon as a dying conference. No question. I mean, remember, what was it, 2016, 2017, when they had, as Tillman says, and Houston people and some folks say, the circus, the sham of having teams submit proposals and then deciding, oh, no, we're not going to expand. I remember on old podcasts, I roasted Commissioner Bob Bowlesby, just roasted him for for how they handled that and treated those schools who were submitting proposals to join. And that's it, never mind. And then once Texas and OU left, oh my gosh, Big 12 was like, people think of the Pac 12 now, because the Pac 12 should have, at that point, poached teams from the Big 12. But Bob Bowlesby, I'll give him credit for it. He kept everybody united. And then he went out and got some of those teams who made presentations 5 years ago. And oh, yeah, now you're good enough. Come on in. Now they got Brett Yormark as commissioner. He's outside the box thinking. And they seem much more stable and united than the Pac 12 and the ACC. So it's amazing how things change. Your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. It's definitely is, like you mentioned, from what appeared to be a collapsing conference. And that was when it was announced that Texas and Oklahoma were leaving for the SEC. I mean, Chris, like you said, there was talks about what was the future of the Big 12 conference. There was even talk that the American Athletic Conference could poach teams from the Big 12 conference.
Remember that? Yep.
That's how absurd and how unstable and how uncertain, really, it's probably a better way to phrase it, it was after that big move. And I think one of the benefits for the Big 12 too, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, and then obviously them adding 4 new schools, some of which were, like you said, were part of the teams that they quote unquote looked at just a few years prior. Whether it's true or not, they could also kind of blame it on the Texas boogeyman. Hey, we wanted you, but hey, that school maybe had something to do with it, and you not getting in back then. And then again, going back to Commissioner Yormark, it's just being able to be innovative and being a way to differentiate yourself from the SEC and the Big Ten. And specifically with, I want to bring up the comment from D Skills right there, where it says the Big 12 is establishing a brand beyond the field, and that's going to pay dividends down the line. Absolutely. Especially when there seems to be a emphasis on men's basketball and basketball in general.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the international games that we've kicked around earlier on the lunch break, not on this show, but on previous episodes. The clinics at Rucker Park, different stuff like that, to be able to establish footholds in really areas where the Big Ten and the SEC aren't. And especially if they're able to expand more westward to Colorado, to Arizona, potentially adding Utah as well, and some of those other corner schools. That is how you execute and survive, because while the SEC and Big Ten might always be known as the powerhouses for football, the Big 12 will create an identity of its own. And at the end of the day, that's really where you survive. Create an identity that makes you unique and makes you stand out and makes people want to look for you. And I think that that's something that it appears Big 12 is doing a good job of.
And I think that's a huge reason for UConn, wanting UConn to join the Big 12 for basketball, is for basketball. It'd be for other, as far as I know, it'd be for all sports. But for the next media rights deal, Commissioner Yormark is really pushing for basically a separate deal for basketball. And if you have, Big 12 has UConn, Kansas, Arizona, Baylor, Houston. Those are some of the top programs in all of college basketball, men's college basketball. So you can go to your TV partners and say, hey, you want top tier matchups, night in, night out, conference play? We got it. We got the best team in college basketball. So what are you willing to give us media rights wise? So